What's up, y'all? My name is Connor, and I'm gonna be recording some of my followers' photos today from Instagram. I actually already filmed this video 2 days ago, and I didn't screen record anything, so that basically just made it completely useless and a waste of time. But I'm screen recording now, that is for sure. I wasn't gonna miss it this time. So let's go ahead and get right into the edits. All right, so this first photo here is from Brandon R. Ski on Instagram. Met him a couple times in person. He's a super cool dude. And I saw this photo one time that he posted of this ship, and I just love anything to do with water, nautical, you know. This photo is just dope. In fact, he's got this little sun flare peeking through on the side. That's attention to detail. Let's go ahead and get started on this edit here. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just crop. This is an Instagrammable photo, so we're just gonna do 4x5. And what I use for getting a good crop is the little thumbnail navigator thing over here on the top left side. I feel like when it's smaller, you get a better idea of what the crop is gonna look like. So I'm gonna put it right there. Actually, maybe crop in a little more, and we'll go with that. Gonna play with the exposure. Exposure is actually really good. The sky looks great. I'm gonna bring those shadows up, but not too much. I'm probably gonna warm up the image, because when you raise the shadows and they look this blue, sometimes that means your color balance is a little on the cool side. I'm just gonna bring the warmth up. That's also gonna make our sunset more dramatic. Sunset, sunrise, I don't know what it is. Maybe about right there. And then we're gonna bring the pink up too, just because a pinker sunset looks nicer than a green one. We'll see how that looks for now. Bring up the colors, I'm gonna boost that vibrance a lot. The saturation just a bit, because when we bring up the saturation on sunset images, almost always makes the sun look too yellowish. So we're gonna leave the saturation for now and fix it later. We're gonna bring up the whites, bring down the blacks again, since we brought up the shadows. Highlights don't really need to change, so I'm gonna leave that there. Clarity, I'm gonna bring it down, just because I don't like a very sharp looking image. And clarity brings in a lot of sharpness to it, artificial lookingness. Sometimes it works, but I'm not always a fan of that. So we're gonna bring clarity down. It also makes like sunbursts look more glowy when you bring clarity down. So that works on this sunset. Bring the texture down. We're good on our basic adjustments. For the tone curve, I'm probably just gonna add a basic tone curve here, fade the highlights a bit, add some contrast back into those shadows. Just bring that black up just a little bit. We'll just leave that there. All right, HSL. First thing I'm gonna do is immediately bring down that yellow, because it was a little hot. I'm gonna add some red into the sun flare, just because like an orangish red looks better than like a yellowy orange, in my opinion. And also, let's see, let's play with the blue hue a little bit. Doesn't really change much except the top up here, but I'm gonna desaturate that. And I'll see what the purples does. That looks kind of cool if we bring it to the magenta side. That looks pretty good right there on the HSL. Let's see if we can add a little bit more color in the color grading tab. So first thing I'm gonna do is go to the highlights, and I think that looks really good when we add like an orangish red to the highlights. See the before and after. Yeah, that looks great. Let's see how it looks in the midtones too. Okay, that's a little too much. And we'll just play around with the shadows and see what looks good. I think just adding the highlights is fine. We'll mess with the blending and balance here. That's looking good so far. Transform, I'm just gonna hit auto, see what it, nope, we're not doing that, okay. Let's see how a vignette looks. Just a slight vignette, nothing crazy. Just to draw your eye to the center. And then we're gonna go to color calibration. And this is where I like to make a lot of my magic happen when I edit colors in my photos. And one thing I almost always do is boost the blue saturation. It just like makes the colors look more rich. I don't know how, but it does. And it works on any camera. Let's play with this. I'm gonna leave the blue where it was. Mess with the green. Kind of like bringing the green to the right a little bit, and then the red, move the red to the right a little bit too. There's the before and after. Now I'm gonna add a little more contrast, see how that looks. Bring up those blacks again, and then I'm gonna add more vibrance, maybe a little more saturation. And I'm gonna call that one done. I think that looks really cool. It's just, you know, sunset vibes. You can never go wrong with those. Thank you, Brandon, for sending that photo in. All right, our next photo here is from Press Pause Images. The nice portrait shot, clear blue sky day. The light's hitting the model's face very nicely, but it's a little dark and flat. So we're gonna fix that now. First thing I'm gonna do is bring up the exposure to about right there. And you can just see on the histogram here that it goes from shifted all the way to the left to more even on the histogram scale. And that's how you wanna expose photos too. You want the histogram to be spread out as much as you can towards the middle. All right, next we're gonna lower the highlights just because her skin's looking a little white. We're gonna bring up the whites just because we lowered the highlights, you know, we lose that contrast, the good contrast. See how the shadows look? If we bring those up any. Can't bring those up too much because her lips start to look weird. So I'm gonna keep those probably just plus 15. And honestly bring up the blacks, probably to about right there. And then we're just gonna add back a little bit of contrast since we took it out by raising the blacks. Then we'll lower the highlights again, and that's looking a lot better exposed. So again, I'm gonna lower the clarity like I did on the last photo because I think lowering clarity works on pretty much any photo. The only photos where clarity really works well on the entire image is buildings or cars. People or like water, skies, clarity doesn't look good. So yeah, we're gonna lower the clarity, lower the texture, and I'm gonna boost the vibrance a lot and the saturation to about right there. And the reason I boost the colors a lot at the beginning is just so I can see what colors are there and I can change them and adjust them to exactly how I want them in the HSL tab. Because if it's too desaturated, you don't even know what colors you're working with. For the tone curve, I'm just gonna add this bright outdoor tone curve, which I use on my bright outdoor photos. And then I'm gonna go into HSL. And the first thing I notice is her skin looks a little yellow. So I'm gonna lower the yellow. I just don't like yellow in photos, if you haven't figured that out by now. But then since she loses some of the color in her skin, we're gonna add back orange, just a little. Gotta be careful, we don't want her looking like our former president. And then I'm gonna bring the red, or the orange, slightly to the left. I'm gonna boost the red saturation. And next, I'm gonna play with the sky because it's very blue. And a very blue, dark blue sky almost always just says amateur. So I'm gonna fix that right now. We're gonna add a little bit of teal, and we're gonna desaturate it just a little bit. So that way it's not like this glaring, you know, dark blue sky. Sometimes it works, but a lot of times, not really. It just looks like a photo you snapped with your phone or something. So here's how we have it so far. And I think the colors look good here. We're gonna go ahead and lower those highlights again, just because her face is really getting the sun on it. That looks good. Let's see what we can do in that HSL tab. For this one, I'm gonna mess with the shadows first. That looks good, adding a little bit of orange, but let's see what else we can do. Okay, so I'm just gonna add a tiny bit of orange, and then to contrast that, I'm gonna add blue into the highlights. That actually looks pretty awesome. Just that simple little touch is a lot. Crop just a little bit to get her more on that 2/3 grid. So we got her leg on this third and then her face on this one. See how a vignette looks. Maybe just a slight one. And then we're gonna, of course, mess with the color calibration again. Boost it just a little bit, slide it around, see how it looks. I think it looks pretty good where it is, honestly. The last thing I'm gonna do is add a radial filter, because a photo like this, there's not much dramatic light going on, so we're gonna add our own in artificially. So I have a preset that I use for my light burst radial filters. That's what I call them. We're just gonna add that over here on the right side of the image because the sun's coming from this way, so you want the lighting to look natural. But adding my preset one, her face gets a little orange again. So we're gonna take out the orange here and maybe lower the exposure and feather it out a lot. To do before and after, we gotta invert it actually. Okay, there we go. We're gonna drag that over and let's see how this looks before and after. We'll add a little bit more exposure. I like that right there. So we really transformed that image, and really that wasn't a very complicated edit. You know, you just had to fix the exposure and it looks pretty good right there. Thank you, Press Pause Images, for sending this one in. All right, and the last photo we have here is from Las Vegas, and it was sent in by Samantha Nicholas. I didn't get her Instagram tag, but thank you, Samantha, for sending this in. So with buildings, lots of buildings here. What do we do with buildings? Add clarity. Yeah, you probably thought that. We'll see if we do it in this photo, but with lines, you know, buildings, they gotta be straight. If you got wonky, weird curves and things like that, it just doesn't look good for photos. Let's go to the transform tab first, and we're gonna click auto, and that immediately just makes it look straight by pressing auto. A lot of times it doesn't do it immediately. You have to play with it, but on this photo, auto worked. So we're gonna go with that. Let's see if we can zoom it out maybe a little bit and then constrain crop so you're not cutting off part of the image when you export. That looks good there. Okay, again, this one's really well exposed, so we're just gonna mess with our normal adjustments here. Raise the shadows, lower the highlights, boost those whites a lot. And the place where I'm looking to make sure the whites are good is in this area. This is overexposed and this is dark, so you wanna look in the middle of the photo, see where you get your whites right. And that would be this area right here. That might be a little too extreme. Okay, right there, and then mess with the blacks. It is nighttime, we need some true black in there. Okay, so it's a subtle change, but there is a little bit of a nicer contrast going on. So in this, we're gonna see how clarity looks. So clarity's bringing out more definition in parts of the photo. And in this one, it works. It doesn't make it look too fake or anything. So we're gonna raise the clarity, lower the texture, just because I don't like sharpness again. Raise that vibrance, raise that saturation. Ooh, that looks good with a lot of saturation. All right, and we'll leave it like that for now. Tone curve, I'm gonna add a little bit of fade on my tone curve here. In images with a lot of black, you don't want too much true black in a photo because it looks muddy, but if there's a lot of really deep black, if you raise the shadows here or raise your black point and give it some fade, it makes the image a lot more pleasing to look at. Gonna go with that one, HSL. So there's a lot of blue going on, and I think one thing that's gonna make this really look cool is if we make our blues teal. So let's see how that looks. It's very teal, but it looks good. So we're gonna lower that saturation so it's not as extreme in your face. Let's see how it looks when we move these oranges and reds around. I'm gonna move the orange that way and the red this way. I'm gonna move the yellow back towards the red. I'm gonna desaturate the green actually and the yellow. I'm gonna desaturate all these because with neon lights, a lot of times neon can make things oversaturated. You want to even out the colors, and that's where you do it in the HSL tab. And I like this already with a more muted look. See the before and after. Yeah, that's looking good. We'll mess with the luminance here a bit. And that looks good raising the blue luminance. Then let's go into color grading. And this one, I think this is gonna look good with some highlights added. So let's see what it looks like. Well, maybe not. Let's see how the shadows look. Oh yeah, there we go. And if you didn't know this, if you get the saturation right, on your HSL tab, you can click the outer dot right here. You can drag that around just to change the color. So I'm gonna do that. I really like this with bluish tones. I don't know, let's see if we can get a purple edit in here. You don't see purple a lot. So to balance out that purple, I'm gonna go into the midtones, maybe look for a little green. That green looks cool right in this area. Those light streaks are great. I think that looks good right there. We don't need to adjust the detail. See if we can add a vignette. Yep, just a slight one. And lastly, calibration. Ooh, that looks good. I like moving this blue slider more towards the teal again, but I'm gonna desaturate it because it gets a little extreme. Let's mess with our shadows. That doesn't do anything. I like moving the red to the right because it makes it more orange and tealish, which is always a good look, you know, especially at nighttime. We'll move that green to the left too. All right, and one thing I'm noticing as I'm editing is there's this light streak coming up the middle here, and I'm just going to accentuate that by raising the exposure. So that's a little too much. Slightly raise it. Actually, let's raise the highlights. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, the last thing I'm gonna do is check and see if grain looks good in this photo. It might not. I actually like that a lot. It kind of looks like 80s-y. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but I'm gonna lower the vibrance. Oh yeah, we're gonna lower the vibrance. So now it's like a muted, faded look. I don't know how to describe this look, but I think this looks really cool on a cityscape photo like this. Good job, Samantha Nicholas. This was a great spot to take a photo. All right, y'all, that's gonna wrap up this editing session. I hope you learned something watching me edit these photos. Be sure to always use your own style. You know, don't copy exactly what I do. Just use my thought process as a guide to edit your own photos, but always use your own style, your own flair when making your own photos, because that's what makes you unique. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next video, whenever that is.